To be able to be part of something that is brought back to life is the best thing for me.
You get to hear something fresh, and I think something old made new in a way, and I think that's such a unique experience.
The work of Opera Rara is, I think, it's so precious.
In this world, nobody here did music before, and it's something special. I am so happy to be part of that project.
It's the first time anybody will hear it. I think that's incredibly exciting.
I'm really very excited about what we have recorded and done.
A very warm welcome. I'm Henry Little. I'm Chief Executive of Opera Rara. It's fantastic to see so many people here. I can see some very old and familiar faces and some friends and some extremely welcome supporters to whom we are extremely grateful. I also see our chairman, Charles Alexander. I'm just going to point him out now because I understand that he's not available after about 12:30. So Charles, I just want to welcome you, and you can wave to everybody. And I don't know if you want to say anything very briefly now before.
No, just to add my welcome to everybody and to see some, as you say, some guardians, some conductors, some singers. Welcome to you all. This is a wonderful day for Opera Rara, the launch of Il PROSCRITTO.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Charles. It's great to have you with us. Okay, so quick introduction to Il PROSCRITTO. I think Carlo will go into a little bit more detail, but, you know, of all the Opera Rara projects, this one is probably one of the most Rara that we have ever done in our 50-year history, because it is a piece that literally came from nothing more than the original composer manuscript. And so if you can imagine the journey of what I call live operatic archaeology that we always do with everything we do at Opera Rara, that is particularly accurate in describing this project. It was restored during the lockdown period, which is roughly around March 2020 to kind of the middle of 2021. And in that particular instance, I would say that lockdown served us well, because it gave us the opportunity to really focus in on this extraordinary piece and to make the decision that it was worth taking on this incredibly painstaking journey from original manuscript to full, complete, restored edition, and then on to studio recording, concert performance, and where we arrive today, where the recorded product is now ready for release. So we recorded it in June of 2022 at Henry Wood Hall in London. And before that, we had a week of rehearsals in the extremely pleasant surroundings of Stone House in Lewisham, the use of which we are extremely grateful to Yvonne Horsfall-Turner, who I can see is on the call, and very kindly gave us the use of the house for our rehearsals. And you'll see from the various photos and videos that we're going to share with you what a splendid place it is to work in. We finished the recording on the 26th of June, and then 2 days later we gave the first live performance, I think since the premiere around 1842, on the 28th of June 2022 at the Barbican Hall, which I'm happy to say was very successful. And that then set us on the post-production journey, which brings us to where we are now, where we're ready to release the recording. So with me to talk to you and about this extraordinary opera, we're very fortunate to have Irene Roberts, mezzo-soprano, and I'm also really pleased that we have the academic and musicologist Teresa Poggiali, who has written a extremely eloquent essay in the booklet for this recording, and it's great to have her with us too. But actually, I want to introduce you to probably the person who was really the artistic engine, if you like, behind this project. And that, of course, is our fabulous artistic director, Carlo Rizzi, because as Carlo will tell you, it was he himself who came across this manuscript during the dark days of lockdown when everybody was isolated and not knowing what to do and what the future held, and found this piece and started to investigated, to explore it, and gradually won us all round to the cause of making a brand new edition and a recording of the piece. So, Carlo, I'm going to hand over to you now to tell us a little bit about that and also to involve some of our other guests in your discussion. Thanks, Carlo.
Hi, good afternoon for you. Good evening for us because we are in Tokyo. Yeah, you see, when Opera Rara started 50 years ago, obviously there was a wealth of opera that have not been performed. From then to now, a lot of this opera has been performed. Some came back into the repertoire. So I was just thinking, I know that there are so many operas that have been composed and are not anymore performed. So I just started during the lockdown this quest. That was a very boring quest, to be quite honest, because all what I did was to download some manuscript from a very actually good Italian internet site called Internet Culturale. And I focused on Mercadante because Mercadante has always been a little bit of a mystery for me, you know, is not as known and as famous as all the other Puccini, Verdi, Bellini, Rossini, Donizetti, but actually is a good composer. And what I have done of Mercadante was not a lot. I played the piano part of some clarinet concerto, I think. Anyway, I was interested in that. So what I did very simply and ruthlessly has been to start to download one manuscript. I probably lost my eyesight in all that exercise because I can tell you, reading on the iPad a manuscript written on parchment paper 200 years ago is not the best thing. And I came across many operas that has not been recorded of Mercadante, some of which will remain unrecorded because I don't think they are very good. And when I came across Il Proscritto, immediately got interested, you know, from a musical point of view, because I always start from the point of view that if I get bored after 5 minutes, probably the public get bored after 5 minutes. And this was not the case with this opera. So I started really to play it on the piano, and I started to send little arias here and there to Henry and to Roger Parker, that is the musicologist that has been sort of in tandem with me in this adventure. And my gut feeling was telling me that the opera was good. It was very interesting, and so this is basically how it happened, very, very simply and also very slowly, because obviously I know that to do a recording of an opera that has never been performed for 100 and something years is very daunting, is very expensive, and the big question that I always have written in front of me, you know, was, it is worth it. And so this is how we started. And then little by little, I got more sure about the opera, about the inventiveness of the melodies, and so yeah, here we are now. As is very interesting, of course, I started from this point of view, from the musical point of view. Then, of course, Roger helped me a lot from the point of view of the, you know, historic background. And then, of course, I found the article of Teresa Poggiali in the CD. This is always a very, very dangerous moment for me, because sometimes I read some things that make me think that I completely misunderstood the opera, but not in this case, at least. So, Teresa, do you want just to say a little bit how do you find the opera and etc. all this?
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I would first like to thank Opera Rara for allowing me to take part in this project and event. And my thanks especially go to Roger Parker, who introduced me to this opera and suggested that I write the essay that will appear in the recording booklet. I came into contact with the Mercadante's Il Proscritto in April 2021, when Roger taught a course on the philology of 19th and early 20th century Italian opera at the University of Florence. During the course, he proposed that my classmates and I each deliver a seminar lecture on Il Proscritto, an opera whose critical edition Roger was preparing at the time, assigning to each of us an aspect of the melodrama to study. I devoted myself to analyzing Salvatore Camarano's libretto in relation to the French drama, which was its model. To be honest, this was the first time I had studied such a libretto in depth. And what immediately became apparent to me were the difficulties that 19th century librettists had to face in reducing a text to the dimensions of an opera libretto. The scaling down of the text, the conversion from a prose text to one in poetry, providing singers with the opportunity to bring to the stage a series of emotional situations to be interpreted in a vocally appropriate manner, respecting the limitations imposed by local censorship. All these demands and more. However, when discussing a libretto, it's also of great importance to ask how the authors arrived at their choice of subject. In the first half of the 19th century, sources for new Italian opera plots were rarely original. Most of them were adaptations from spoken theater or taken from ballet plots, or more occasionally from narrative prose works. It was then very much according to the practice of the time that Il Proscritto was based on a plot already known to the public. Its source, in fact, was a French play, Le Proscrit, first performed at Paris's Theatre de la Renaissance in 1839, and this play had been staged many times in Italy and had been the inspiration for 2 operas before Mercadante's. But the choice of subject also depended on the cast available that season at the theatre. In the case of Il Proscritto, the Teatro San Carlo company at the time didn't have available the usual tenor and soprano protagonists, with their baritone bass and mezzo-soprano antagonists. Instead, Mercadante's opera featured 2 important tenor roles, those of Giorgio Argyle and Arturo Murray, given respectively to Giovanni Basadonna and Gaetano Fraschini, a leading lady, Antonietta Rainieri Marini, who was a mezzo-soprano, and Odoardo, a character of almost equal importance to the female protagonist, played by the contralto Eloisa Buccini. Another important aspect of the Il Proscritto libretto was that Camarano decided to move the action from Grenoble in 1816 to Scotland in the middle of the 17th century. doing so doubtless to avoid politically sensitive comparisons between post-revolutionary French and present-day Naples. Other than that, a comparison between the play and the opera shows that Camarano tried to remain as far as possible faithful to his model. There are numerous scenes in common, and entire passages from one are taken over in the other. However, the necessary reduction from 5 to 3 acts meant cutting many scenes that, although they can be thought of secondary importance from a purely narrative point of view, were of great significance in our understanding of the characters in depth. Their interiority, the background of the relationships that bind them together, the motives that led them to act as they do. When analyzing an opera libretto, though, one must always remember that the text is only a part, however important, of a more complex whole, and that emotional states so briefly narrated in verbal terms can, in the hand of a skillful composer, be expanded to become part of the musical fabric. So, as I tried to say in the booklet, I think that is exactly what Mercadante did in this fascinating opera. Make the characters, in particular perhaps the heroine Malvina, into an unusually complex personality by means of the music he gave to them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much for all this. And I would like to connect with what you said about the fact that we have 2 tenors and two mezzo, because this was one of the things that when I was reading the opera for me was very interesting, because one of the 2 tenors was higher, the younger lover or the younger husband, the other was more old, and also the 2 mezzos, one Malvina is higher and also is a female character, while Odoardo is there is the brother of Malvina, is playing a trouser role. I think is actually very interesting. The story, I mean, I'm not going to tell you the story, but of course, basically Malvina finds herself with a wealth of husbands between the one that thought they were dead and the one that are alive. So, of course, the big duet of the 2 tenors is the 2 husbands fighting about one, well, this time rather than a woman, a wife, the same wife. That is rather rare in operas. Can we listen to this, because it's quite beautiful. Yeah, there we are. The interesting thing of this duet is actually that musically is like a little canon. So one tenor starts one bar, the next tenor starts the same music the bar after, and what happens is actually sound like they really are musically fighting, and I think is quite interesting, this cabaletta. And the other thing, apart from the two tenors, I was saying we have the two mezzos, and we are lucky that we have one of the two mezzos here. Ciao, Irene. And we have just been on the stage together. Actually, no, I was in the pitch, she was on the stage. We have just finished to perform Aida here in Tokyo. You've done Aida many times, you've done Merol many times, you've done the role of Malvina only once, the first time with us. How was that?
Well, the very, very beginning of my preparation for Malvina was a bit daunting because I couldn't get an idea of there were no traditions, right, of how singers interpret the role or how conductors interpret the whole piece. So I taught myself the role sitting at the piano. I played the whole thing before singing anything to get a sense of it. And then some of the fear was melting away as I became more confident as to how to approach it. And actually, after a few months of preparation and then finally getting into this rehearsal room and this beautiful home and singing with Elizabeth especially was one of the greatest musical experiences I've had. I have never sung a duet with another mezzo. And it was it's hard to explain the pleasure that I think Elizabeth also felt, that we both felt in it, because there's a stereotype about sopranos and mezzo sopranos. And especially in a duet between a soprano and a mezzo, the mezzo is the one who follows and who listens and does pretty much whatever the soprano wants to do. But we had this musical magic where we both listened to each other. And I felt like we were both able to create something that neither of us had ever experienced before. And it wasn't just the timbre of our voices, but we're a different personality than sopranos typically. And it was so enjoyable. I mean, I have to say I'm biased, and this is the favorite part, maybe second to the final scene in the opera, but this duet was such a treat. And I can't help but love the opera mostly to have that opportunity. I mean, I would be lying if I said anything else, but to have that opportunity, I don't know where else in what other opera that would exist.
Yeah, and Irene is right in this because actually this duet between her and Odoardo is a very how do you say it, a very sympathetic moment. There is the two of them that are supporting each other. Malvina is in this turmoil because she had these visions about her first husband that will come back to haunt her because she's married the second one. And also it's interesting that the cabaletta that is in this duet is not a real coloratura cabaletta, but still with a very musical, very lyrical ideas. One thing that I would like to underline is that, what Irene said, you were a little bit daunted at the beginning. Well, trust me, everybody was daunted because the thing is when you have a tradition or something that has been done in a certain way, you can at least compare yourself to that. You can accept it, you can refuse it, but this was completely tabula rasa. And in fact, that you remember, for example, in what we are going to listen now, the time, honestly, the nights, the sleepless night that I passed trying to get the right tempo, because it should have not been too quick, could have not been too slow, and just thinking about the orchestration, about the key, because there are a lot of keys. I mean, I think that duet, there are 6 flats in the duet between Malvina and Odoardo. It was giving also this very dark feeling. So, during the rehearsal is not like generally when you come to the first day of rehearsals that you know something. We just were finding our feet, not because we didn't know the opera, but is like finding the right timing, the right phrasing for everything, and this has to be done, for all the opera, the 1 hour and a half that the opera lasts. So why we don't listen now to the beginning of the duet between Maldina and Odoardo, Il Marche Freme. Okay, now I don't want to wave too much the flag of Opera Rara, but I think this can be on the same level of the duet between Norma and Adalgisa in the second act. Is fantastic, and listening to this, I'm so reminded me how the two protagonists voice really works so well together, with a slightly different darkness in the Elizabeth, but not too much, but enough to understand that there are two different people, two different. So that it was really a great moment. And I think we are way to goodbye to our chairman, but that's good. Chairman, not bad, but yeah. And now, do we? There is another moment in this area, in this opera, that is very, very interesting, and this is actually the aria that is the only, let's say, big aria of Odoardo. Because you see, one thing of this opera is that it's a very minimalist opera, if you want. The third act, that is about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, is just one number, the big number 7. And I think Mercadante in this has been rather Verdian. Verdi is always very efficient with his music and with his writing. He doesn't hang on a lot. And I think that Mercadante did the same thing with this opera, with this exception, that is the aria of Odoardo, where evidently he decided to have a huge aria with a big chorus at the beginning, then the aria of Odoardo, then the tempo di mezzo, and then the double cabaletta, both with the chorus. And is completely a different sound world from what we have just heard, because what we have heard was the ladder between a brother and a sister, and now what we will hear is somebody who wants to go to fight to free Giorgio. And can we listen to that? Yeah, well, it's rather amazing, this the composition and the execution. I actually remember something quite funny. I am known to be, let's say, not a slow conductor. And so when I started to do this cabaretta, I remember Elizabeth came close to me and said, I thought, okay, she's asking me to do it slower. And she said, could we be a little bit faster? And so, well, yeah, darling, as you want. And no, I think this shows actually how this opera, is so rich in things, in inventions. And of course, we have talked at the moment only about the soloist part, but there are two huge concertati at the end of the Act 1 and the end of Act 2. And for example, this opera didn't have a lot of luck when it was performed, but I think that maybe Mercadante was a little bit ahead of his time, because he finished with this huge concertato in Act 1, and then in Act 2, and then the third act is something that is incredibly intimate. There's no chorus in the third act, and he finished with with Malvina dying and the two tenors just doing a couple of screams, she's dead. So maybe the public was listening for something, was hoping for something different. And but this concertati has been really a joy to rehearse, to conduct, and to perform. And of course, I just would like to remind you all the other singers, in alphabetical order, just to avoid any problem. Neil Anderson, that did a small part of the Ufficiale, Alessandro Fischer, that did the part of Osvaldo, Susanna Gaspar, Godetti Janelidze, Sally Matthews, and of course Ramon Vargas, that should have been with us, but he couldn't, and even Ayon-Rivas, that again he couldn't be here. They think that for me was more personally more rewarding was actually to work in the moment is the moment when you meet the orchestra and everything comes together. And I have to say that both the the Britten Sinfonia and the chorus of Opera Rara has been so open and so ready to explore this together, that already from the point of view of the conductor, half of the job is done when it's like this, because really there was a very live feeling during the rehearsals and during the performance. And one thing that after 40 years of career I can sort of gauge quite well is if people like the music or not. And much to my joy, when we started to rehearse, I could feel that people were interested. And I thought, good, maybe it's a good discovery. And now we are going to listen to one of these concertati. I don't remember which one we are going to listen, but I will tell you at the end. It was the finale of Act 1.
So we've just got some time for a few questions. If anybody has any questions, just please unmute yourself and jump in. Any? Terry.
Thank you for today. Are you more excited about Mercadante than you were 2 years ago? I mean, do you have a sense that there are 3 or 4, and this is really a question for Teresa as well, that there are 3 or 4 other operas that you'd like to work on and assess? Or do you think this is a bit of a one-off?
As you see, the business of the one-off, I think we have to always keep an open mind, because, for example, look at even what we have done with Zingari. You know, Leoncavallo is definitely a sort of one composer opera, because it's known 90% for Pagliacci. Zingari, actually, I think musically for certain ways is even a better opera. I think that of course we will go on looking on the score. There are so many scores. I mean, you need to think about this. Sometimes people ask me, well, why opera rara? And I always do this little parallel. You know, when I was young, every summer in Italy, maybe it's the same thing also the British summer, I don't know, but every summer in Italy, there was the song of the summer, you know, and for 3 months, everybody was been blasted with that song. Great success. The next year, there was another song of the summer, and the year after another one. Does this mean that the first 2 were bad? No, but there's been another one, and then another one. Now, if you think that when Mercadante composed Il Proscritto, there were about another 4 operas that were done in only in what's called in Napoli at the time, you know, with names like Donizetti and Verdi. Obviously, something gets to be less known. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. So the truth is, I think that this is a very good opera. Does this make Mercadante a better composer? Well, he composed this opera and I thought it was very good. I don't know if we will find some other that I will, because then it's very subjective. You know, it's not like we are going to do the opera omnia of Mercadante. I think that we should bring back to propose to the public things that we value, you know, worth it. So the answer is at the same time, I don't know, but also, yes, we will go on trying to find always some other opera, but not only with Mercadante, with other composers too.
One of the things that struck me is I don't think this is one of Mercadante's reform operas, and he made a big attempt to become much more dramatic and less vocal and a little more, you know, he basically tried to do a little bit of a Gluck after a certain period. And this opera I enjoyed partly because of the fireworks, partly because of the way, for example, that the offstage band smashes into the beginning of Act 1. So it's interesting to see that he went down a route that perhaps makes his operas less exciting in the 21st century.
Well, you see, is again, it depends. Certain composer, many composers, they try new things in their life, and sometimes it's a good idea, sometimes it was a very bad idea. And what you're saying about the reform of Mercadante is rowing back already from, you know, his proclaim of having a new opera, etc., in this one. But I think. You know, even in Verdi, you have some operas that, yeah, that are there only because it's Verdi, because certain operas are not very good. Then again, you find, for example, you do a Foscari, that is an opera that was not known, that I think is an absolute jewel. It's fantastic, and is also very short, by the way, like Il Proscritto. So I think it's very important. One thing is definitely to learn, and I think this is very, very necessary, to learn exactly what was the trajectory both as a composer and also as a man of culture in all the musicians, and to understand the reason that pushed them to do something or to change something else. But then at the end of the story, we have to have things that please the public. Nobody wants to hear a boring opera or a boring play or a boring conference. So I think in this we need to be a little bit vague and elastic, but you are right. Definitely Mercadante went back from his idea to completely reform the opera, because was not very successful in that.
Great, thank you. Alan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I don't think it is just a one-off opera. Remember that Opera Rara has already recorded 3 complete Mercadante operas. And in fact, the first of them, the Orazio Curiazzi, was the one that latched me on not only to Mercadante, but to Opera Rara. See, I think it's wonderful. I just hope it's still in the catalogue.
It is.
So good. Yeah. So, I think all 3, that one, the Virginia and the Madantioca, are all worthwhile exploring, certainly for home listening, as recordings. It's just wonderful.
Brilliant, thank you. And yes, thank you very much for reminding us of that, because of course, as you rightly say, this is part of a much longer Mercadante journey, which began much earlier. But as you can tell, we are immensely proud of our new recording of Il Proscritto under Carlo's inspired leadership to bring us on this journey. And as I say, today is a great landmark when the recording goes on sale internationally. It's available via our own website and also via our distributor partner, Warner's, and on all the major digital streaming platforms as well. Just to very, very briefly summarize some future events at Opera Rara, Carlo actually returns to us in just 2 weeks' time to lead our next major studio opera recording and concert, which is Donizetti's L'esule di Roma, which we have created a brand new performing edition, and we will make a studio recording, which will then culminate in a concert performance at London's Cadogan Hall on the 11th of May, which I'm very delighted to say is now completely sold out. But for those of you who want to get a sense of what L'esule di Roma is all about and why it has been selected for the very particular and special Opera Rara treatment, we will be hosting a Opera Insider event at the World Heartbeat Studios in Vauxhall on the 9th of May. And you can find out more information on that at our website, opera-rara.com/events. Going into the future, our Opera Rara Salon series of smaller concerts continues. We will be working with a range of very exciting young artists, including the Spanish soprano Elena Zamudio, mezzo-soprano Kija Binek, the Colombian tenor Julian Henao Gonzalez, and the very exciting and aspiring British bass William Thomas. And again, you can find more information on that at opera-rara.com events. Following that, our Donizetti Songs project continues into its, well, actually begins its very first phase with a series of 2 recital recordings featuring the American tenor Lawrence Brownlee and the French-Canadian baritone Etienne Dupuis. And that is the beginning of a equally exciting and very long journey where we will be promoting around 160 of the extraordinary songs by Donizetti. Again, this is led by Carlo, and that will happen over the next 2 to 3 years. But this first phase will culminate in a concert performance at the Wigmore Hall on the 9th of September. So that's also a date for your diary. And I would also say, in terms of future releases, along the lines of very much, and now for something completely different, we will be launching our recording of La Princesse de Trebizond, which we made in September last year, in September of 2023. And that's also going to be a very exciting event. But for now, I want to say a huge thank you to Teresa Poggiali for joining us, and also to Irene Roberts and to Carlo, particularly after a performance of Aida. It's wonderful that you've made the time to be with us today, and we're extremely grateful to both of you, and also to Carlo for giving such a erudite, eloquent, and I hope very compelling story of our Il Proscritto adventure. I just want to say finally that as all of you who know Opera Rara well know, that we depend on the contribution of individuals and trusts and foundations for all of our work, and roughly 80% of our income comes from the generosity of our donors and supporters. And there are several of you on the call today whose help is extraordinary and generous and substantial, and without that we would not be able to do the work that we do, and we would not be able to bring these amazing projects like Il Proscritto back to life. So I'd like to end with a huge thank you to you for your help, and we are extremely grateful. So there we are. Il Proscritto is on sale, as I say, and I hope you will spread the word and encourage it to be the success that it deserves to be. But for now, thank you very much for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you at an event or on screen as soon as possible in the future. Thanks very much, and bye-bye.